Last month, when AMD announced their new Ryzen 7000 series, they claimed that their new Ryzen 5, the 7600X, was going to be 11% faster than the Core i9-12900K. They even supplied us with some nice little charts that showed the Ryzen 5 outperforming the i9 in some 1080p gaming, as well as a Geekbench single-thread performance test. As you've seen if you've been following this, the new Ryzen 5 does have some really fast cores, but my question was, does this processor really perform 11% faster across the board? Because the i9 technically has 8 cores, even though 8 are P and 8 are E. So my question was, can I find any benchmarks where people actually tested this? And yeah, I did. These benchmarks came from the YouTube page For Gamers, and if you're into gaming, you should go check them out. The first is a Cinebench R23 single-core test, where the i9 does outperform the Ryzen 5. The next is a Cinebench R20 multi-core test, where the i9 dominates the Ryzen 5 because of its multiple cores. And the third one is a Blender 2.91 Gooseberry test, where lower is better, keep in mind. The i9 does outperform the Ryzen 5 again. Next we move to some gaming benchmarks. The way I'm going to do this is I'm going to name the game, and then I'm going to name the processor that performs the best. Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 Beta, Ryzen 5, Battlefield 2042, Intel i9, and Call of Duty Warzone, Intel i9 again. Next we got Spider-Man Remastered, the i9, then we got Apex Legends, the Ryzen 5, then we got Cyberpunk 2077, which AMD claimed to tie in their testing, but the i9 won here as well. Next, I got these benchmarks from Linus Tech Tips. If you don't know who they are, definitely check them out. They're one of my favorite channels. First, we got a Blender benchmark, where the Ryzen 5 actually is beaten by the Core i7. They didn't even put the Core i9 on this chart. Then we have a V-Ray render, where the i9 definitely outperforms the Ryzen 5 and the Ryzen 7. And Microsoft Flight Simulator, where the Ryzen 5 does outperform the i9 by just a tiny little bit. Next, I went to Gamers Nexus, who's another one of my favorite channels, and if you don't know who they are, definitely check them out. And they tested Final Fantasy XIV, where the i9 and the i7 outperformed the Ryzen 5. Far Cry 6, where the i9 outperforms the Ryzen 9 and the Ryzen 5, but for some reason not the Ryzen 7 5800X from last generation. There's actually been a lot of talk about that being one of the best gaming processors, but that's not what this video is about. And then they did their own Blender benchmark, where the i9 did beat the Ryzen 5. Now I'm kind of questioning whether I should buy into the Ryzen 7000 series. What do you think? Leave it in the comments. Thanks for watching.